No intro, no small talk, let's jump straight to the main point. I'm Nim, and here it is. Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 36. And so, just as we predicted in the days leading up to Chapter 36's release, especially regarding who would be on the cover, this chapter truly proves that Amado is the most relevant character to represent the most crucial aspect of this chapter. The title, Parental Love, is paired with Amado's new outfit design. It's a fascinating title that highlights a father's struggle for his beloved child. Picking up from several scenes in the previous chapter, especially after Kashin Koji's hiding place was exposed and Amado used a command to knock Koji unconscious, it's at this point the kidnapping was carried out with Kawaki's help. But of course, even though Kawaki was curious, especially about Amado's motive for kidnapping Kashin Koji, he didn't really care about it as long as Amado's plan didn't become a reason or factor hindering him from defeating the Divine Tree Man. Most importantly, at this point, Amado had granted Kawaki's request to unleash his full offensive potential. Yeah, although his offensive power could change instantly if Kawaki isn't in battle mode. Continuing with Amado's plan after knocking Koji unconscious, Amado had to quickly take Koji away before Boruto found out, because in this situation Kawaki confirmed that Boruto was still somewhere around Konoha village. Especially with the future Shinjutsu ability likely to be updated soon, they had to move as quickly as possible before Amado's plan was anticipated. But before that, we're in a complicated, frustrating situation, and I'd even say it's the worst. In the last few chapters, especially during Shikamaru and Kobu's interrogation, this chapter continues the situation where Kobu explains something very strange. He suddenly found himself on the roof of the Hokage building, surrounded by several Shinju, even though as far as he could remember, he had just been in the interrogation room. Interestingly, it turns out that while Inojin had taken over Kobu's consciousness, Kobu truly had no memories left other than being in the interrogation room and suddenly being surrounded by a horde of Divine Tree humans. But because Inojin was forced out of Kobu's consciousness by Koji in that situation, Kobu was shocked when Boruto suddenly appeared and saved him. But guess what he thought and how he saw the situation? Yeah, this is something that really triggers our emotions. In Kobu's hypothesis, all of this was part of a ridiculous and laughable act. He believed that Boruto's sudden and seemingly coincidental appearance to save him was nothing more than a part of their strategy. In other words, Kobu suspected that he had been set up. And not just by Boruto. Kobu actually suspected that Shikamaru and the others could also be involved in this ridiculous scheme to interrupt the interrogation he was conducting. And simply put, time and time again, Kobu truly still firmly believes that Shikamaru is indeed on the rebels' side. And that's not all that gets our emotions riled up. Even the elders, whose eyes are almost completely closed, consider Kobu's hypothesis to be very plausible, that Boruto was the one who lured the Divine Tree human into the village. But in the midst of this situation, Sai, who was originally on Konoha's side and knew that the scenario also involved his own son, plus had already sided with Shikamaru and was willing to help him, spontaneously tried to defend Shikamaru, arguing that the accusations were too far-fetched and excessive. But in the end, Kobu's decision was final. Ever since Boruto was interrogated, it was Shikamaru who helped him escape and unlocked his handcuffs. And even though Kobu wanted to find additional evidence, the law would still be enforced, including against anyone involved in or who helped Shikamaru. But at this point, Shikamaru as Hokage must take responsibility. And one of the consequences he must face is being relieved of his duties as Hokage. Based on the report Kobu has already submitted to the daimyo, especially regarding this case, he's just waiting for the decision to take effect. And until that decision is officially ratified, Shikamaru will no longer serve as Hokage. After all, forcibly removing a Hokage is the absolute prerogative of the Fire Country's daimyo, not the elders of Konoha. Yeah, I think we all know that, right? And as we've seen, Shikamaru is still Shikamaru. Even in the face of a threatening situation, he's still able to act and think calmly. But at the same time, it turns out that Koji has already been brought into Konoha by Kawaki. According to the report from the censor team to Shikamaru, they detected chakra similar to Jiraiya's. But based on that information, Shikamaru didn't want anyone to know about it and ordered it to be kept secret. This means Shikamaru will handle this himself, especially since he knows it's Kashin Koji. And here he is. With his hands restrained in handcuffs, Koji had absolutely no chance of escaping. More importantly, the restraints used on him were jutsu sealing handcuffs, meaning he couldn't use any of his abilities at all. But that wasn't a serious problem. At this point, Amado made it clear that he had no intention of becoming Koji's enemy. At the same time, Amado admitted that he was shocked and never expected Koji to have survived his battle against Ishiki. On top of that, he also expressed a strong interest in Koji's Shinjutsu, Jippo. And if we look back at the past few chapters, especially when Koji explained to Inojin that the ability to see the future couldn't be used at will and had been updated 4 days ago, it seems that information leaked and became known to Amado. As a result, Amado analyzed the situation and found a very good loophole. Because of this, Amado kidnapped Koji as a new version of the future that didn't yet exist, or had only just been created, following developments previously unknown to Kashin Koji. Not only that, but Amado also conducted an in-depth analysis of that ability. What Amado discovered was its greatest weakness. Aside from the blind spots in the predictions, the interval between one synchronization and the next update is quite long. Because of this, Amado carried out an operation that I find hard to believe. And although this ultrasound-based procedure didn't cause any physical injury, at the very least, Amado utilized his genius to modify Kashin Koji's brainwaves and make them more active. As a result, Koji can not only foresee the future much faster, but also evade any danger with far greater ease. But unfortunately, in this case, that's not the case at all. I mean, it hasn't been explained at all what the consequences were for Koji himself afterward. But as I said before, Amado had no intention of being evil or becoming an enemy. Instead, he asked Koji to observe a development that he had been witnessing through his Jippo ability about a woman who was right in front of his eyes. Yep, that's Akebi, a clone of his daughter. Amado's motive for kidnapping Koji is too complex. But one thing is certain, Amado wanted to know whether, among all the possible future developments he had seen, there was a possibility that Kawaki would implant his karma into that clone. But unfortunately, according to the future visions and all the memories Koji had accumulated over time, he had never seen anything like that. Because in every future he had witnessed, Jura was always there, and Kawaki was ultimately killed by him. It's a detail we really have to appreciate, how Ikemoto drew Amado's pose to make him look sad and perhaps even desperate. But I don't think it's that simple, and as confirmed, Amado didn't respond at all and immediately unlocked the handcuffs. And yep, the interrogation between Amado and Koji ended with Amado turning his back thanking Koji and looking forward to the future that will unfold from this point onward. On the other hand, this might have been perfectly timed. When Boruto had just arrived at his hideout, he didn't see Koji at all. But it didn't take long for Koji to return to his hideout. And in this situation, Koji didn't want to waste time talking to Boruto. Instead, he immediately contacted Inojin and asked him to connect him with Ada and Shikamaru. First, Koji wanted Ada to look into what had happened a few hours earlier and tell him what Amado had done. But when Ada suddenly became annoyed because Koji had ordered her around so abruptly, Amado's modification worked perfectly. As a result, Koji received an update about the future through his Shinjutsu, Jippo. And as a result of that update, it seems that you can see so many scenes from the future being created. But at least aside from the scene of Borushiki's awakening being the most interesting part of the future scenes, one of the most important parts for now is Sarada. Earlier, Boruto asked Sarada to let herself be kidnapped by Code. And as one way to lure Code out, Sarada knew she had to walk through the middle of the village, right along a path that people rarely use. Sure enough, Code, who had already left several claw marks around Konoha village, spotted Sarada walking alone. Unfortunately, Code sensed and realized that Boruto's chakra was emanating from Sarada. It was the pin or symbol that Boruto had given her earlier. As you all know, each pin or symbol is always imbued with Boruto's chakra beforehand to help him detect the location where he will teleport. But since Code knew that, Sarada failed to bring the pin, and Code successfully kidnapped her without her carrying a single pin or symbol. In other words, the strategy of using Sarada as bait failed, and Chapter 36 ends with a look of worry on Boruto's face after he failed to save Sarada in time. However, will Boruto still be able to find the exact location where Code will take Sarada? Unfortunately, there won't be a Chapter 37 next month. This means Chapter 37 will be released in September. And yeah, that's it, at least for a quick review of Chapter 36. If you enjoyed it, help me get 100 likes or 1K hype points. I'm Nim without the E. See you in my analysis and other discussion videos about Boruto. Bye bye, Data Bio.